Welcome to the smartest people in the room. We're glad you're here, and just by showing up, you're already demonstrating your very own smarts. Today, I am breaking with convention by featuring two guests from the same company. But trust me, very quickly you will learn why this makes sense, and I promise you will leave here smarter and more enlightened than you arrived. Before we get started, please let me take care of some business. First, to the audience, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat window. The reason we do these webinars is twofold. First, we want to showcase really smart people and the amazing work they do day to day in the music industry. But the second reason is a bit more nuanced. Many of you know that I'm a music industry headhunter. I run the music practice at Turnkey ZRG, and I place music executives in roles throughout the industry. So by definition and function, I help people connect with companies. In this series, my goal is to help you make more connections, and I invite you to take full advantage of that opportunity. Specifically, I invite you to engage with the speakers and the other attendees in the chat of the Zoom. Please introduce yourselves, share your LinkedIn profile, say hello to your friends, and please make some new ones. And ask questions of our speakers. We will try to address as many of those questions along the way as possible. And finally, this is very important. Please make sure your chat is set to address everyone, not just the host and speakers. I want to thank our program sponsors, for without their support, we could not continue to do this for free. Special thanks to MedJet, Turnkey ZRG, the Tennessee Entertainment Commission, Tennessee Brew Works, and my favorite industry podcast, Unlimited Supply. Let's get down to business. In today's host seat, we welcome Christian Ringstad Schultz, who is the co-founder and CEO of Masterchannel, bringing a unique perspective on how to build a sustainable tech company in the music industry. With close to 20 years of experience as a music producer, in addition to being a former PhD candidate in the field of data-driven business models, his perspective on building AI companies with real value is unique. Christian is also one of the founding members of Music Technology Norway, an organization dedicated to growing the Norwegian ecosystem for music tech companies. Welcome, Christian. It is an honor to have you with us today. And joining him is Simon Hestermann. Simon is the CTO and co-founder of Masterchannel, where he invented the company's proprietary artificial intelligence system for audio mastering. Prior to Masterchannel, he worked as a spatial audio researcher at Fraunhofer and mastered music for artists like James Carter and Tyler Ward. Simon also consulted companies like Sam Altman's World Project and the vinyl startup Elastic Stage with his audio technology expertise. He has deep technical understanding of AI and machine learning, but equally enjoys analyzing tech developments from a more philosophical and societal perspective. It is my pleasure to welcome these two rock stars to our platform. Please take it away, gentlemen.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having us here.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, it's a pleasure being here, all the way from Oslo, Norway. So I think maybe a good start here, Simon, is to maybe talk a bit about your background, because we obviously talk a lot about the company on our day-to-day here, but maybe it's more interesting, since you are both like coming from the musical side, but especially from the technical side of things. Why did you venture into music tech? Because there are so many other fields that you could have gone into.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Obviously, you could argue the grass is always greener somewhere else. And so I think I've asked myself the question, why did I end up in music tech? And I think the simple answer is because there's so much that goes into a well-built music tech product that I feel like many other industries lack. And that is not to say that other industries don't have their own challenges, but I just feel like you could argue like a softy tech person. I care a lot about design. I care about emotions. I care about so many things that I feel like are well represented in a music tech product, that for some reason, whenever I develop something that has to do with audio, with music, it just always ignites that extra spark that I just don't get from I don't know, looking at a fintech app or something else. There's just always this one piece missing, and I think that's why I'm still here. Otherwise, I would be doing other things.
Do you think that's a positive thing when developing this? Because I'm kind of comparing it to, well, everybody knows Daniel Ek, but he's also he's a techie going into the music industry. And do you think like your tech background is a positive thing rather than coming only from music?
So many answers to this one question, but I think the how do I best say this? I think it's good that your perspective is, let's say, more on the how do we make money, how do we ship things, and I'm more of the person that is like, oh no, we need to do the extra 50, 100, 200%. I think that's where the magic really lies. So I guess the question is, why tech in music, or like
like if the background, because both me and you are, well, we have worked with music but not as professional in that sense before we started Masterchannel, and what kind of positive things that has ignited when we actually build Masterchannel, because I have a lot of answers from myself, but it's cool to hear it from a more tech perspective, I would say.
Right. So what my tech background has brought to Masterchannel, or what Masterchannel has brought to me?
What your tech background has brought to Masterchannel that has been positive for us going into the music industry.
Right. Okay. Now I get it. Yeah. I think that it never hurts to be thorough and to try to understand things on a deeper level. That goes for anything that you're building. And I think the benefit of understanding technology at a deep level is that you can cut all the noise from narratives that circulate or discussions that circulate. So if we take AI, for example, right? Like everybody's talking about very abstract concepts about AI, what it can mean for society, and what these models are going to be able to do in the future. But I think if you really understand what happens behind the scenes, you have a much better understanding of what is possible and what is just utopia. And in that, you realize what actually can be built and what can maybe be commercialized or what can be used beneficially, versus just thinking about, like trying to live in that narrative and hyping up something that maybe doesn't exist. And I think for us at Masterchannel, that has meant that we actually ship stuff that works, that we try not to ship things that are half baked or feel like they over promise. I think we try to be our communication, we try to keep as close as possible to what's actually happening as possible. And I think that's a big plus. And I think that's because I want to believe that I can discern hype from reality.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I would say that from my perspective, coming from more the business side of things, I also believe that where I'm coming from, making sure that you actually build a viable business model, especially nowadays when everybody is building with third-party services. So you kind of 25% of your gross margin goes to Anthropic or OpenAI directly. The way that we have had a focus on going deep and actually building our own model has been one of the key things of our success, because it has enabled us to actually generate money that is enough for us to sustain ourselves as a company, and thus provide more value back to the artists and the partners that we are working with.
So then if I ask the question back, why did you end up in music tech? If you could argue historically, music is not a very lucrative business, at least on average. Obviously there's peaks everywhere, but
yeah. So I always like to say, and some people might be mad at me for saying this or disagree, but if you are to become rich, you don't start a music tech company, because the chances are so slim of you actually making it, just because of the size of the market. But I think I ended up in the music industry with Masterchannel, and due to me wanting to work with something creative. So prior to Masterchannel, I started just for some background here, I started a gaming tech company that eventually went bankrupt. But I always knew that, okay, I like working B2C, but I think like long term, it isn't necessarily music tech that I will do full time my whole life, as long as I can work directly towards users and actually learn about the users and learn what ticks or what checks off. That's some of the most rewarding things I do when I have user interviews with people. And I see one of you in the chat, Michael, there, who is a user of ours. So I love to like talk to people, and musicians are cool people to talk to, but it doesn't mean that, yeah, it's kind of random, I would say, that we ended up together as well, which is also an interesting story in its own terms.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, the chances are slim, but we have defied the odds so far.
Yeah.
And maybe you could argue that if you're against the odds, then you get that extra kick in the butt to double down. And every time you want to give up, you don't want to do the world a favor and give up. And instead you're like, no, we're going to double down and we're going to make it work, right? And I think that has been our strength, just being consistent and just reevaluating business models, technology every single day to make sure we're building something actually useful. But maybe we should go back and talk about how Masterchannel came into existence.
Yeah, and maybe what could be interesting is, because everybody has experienced AI these days, but the cool thing with Masterchannel, at least from the reason, or one of the key reasons why I was interested as a user first, because I actually started out using Masterchannel or Masterbus as it was named in the first place, was because you actually developed an AI before everybody was talking about AI. It was mainly researchers who did that.
True. Yeah. So I remember when I studied computer science, AI was, a subject like not like any other. I think there were clear signs that this was something that had a lot of potential. But I don't think anyone was anticipating AI to become a mainstream topic anytime soon. And when I was studying computer science, on the side I had my own mastering business. So I was a human mastering engineer. And that's sort of, as opposed to today where I can do everything at once at Masterchannel, I had two different gigs going on. I had my studies, and then I had my mastering business. And so during the day I was doing computer science, AI stuff, and then in the evening I would be sitting in the studio manually tweaking knobs, listening to music, and doing the organic mastering that we all cherish. And
do you miss it?
I do miss it sometimes, yes.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, back in the days, that was a great balance. But as I became more and more successful as a mastering engineer, I just couldn't keep up with the demand. And the next natural thing you can do is prioritize. So I kept prioritizing bigger and bigger artists, made a name for myself. And I realized at some point that A, I was burning out, and B, I leave money on the table, or let's say I disappoint people because I can't help them. Right? They really love my sound. They've listened to other music I've mastered. They want to come to me, work with me, and I have to turn them down because implicitly I'm saying there's somebody more important than you that I'd rather work with. So unfortunately, you have to go somewhere else. And you were one of those lucky people. Christian messaged me, and I said it's not happening. And luckily, at the time, I already had built a prototype of what was then called Masterbus. Because my thought process was, if there are all these people that, if I'm being brutally honest, don't necessarily advance my career as an engineer, but still are willing to pay me for my expertise, why not build something that gets them there, let's say 80% of the way, for a much lower price? And that's how I built the first AI prototype. I used my computer science knowledge from during the day, built a prototype with all the knowledge I had from my long evenings at the studio, put it on a website, and then you were one of the people I directed to that website.
Yeah, that's correct. But I think because there's an interesting question here, which we have answered from time to time, which is the difference between the normal mastering and the Wes Clark option. And as you mentioned, like the first version is kind of a clone of your own expertise. But at some point, we got in, or 2 years after launching, we got in touch with the Grammy-winning engineer Wes Clark, he won a Grammy for Clean Bandit, Rather Be, that he engineered, and he has 12 or 13 number one in UK, 30 billion streams, and we decided to do the same process as Simon did in the first place, but with him. So maybe just for the audience here, you can explain like what's the difference and how did you go about because you were the one that chatted most with Wes on the technical side of things, and kind of taking his knowledge and putting it into an AI model.
Yeah, and I mean, now we're really going down the rabbit hole, so stop me if it becomes too nerdy. But essentially, I mean, I was approaching this from a very technical perspective, right? So I just tried to minimize my workload. So let's say the first thing I did was whenever somebody sent me a file, it would be automatically imported into my DAW. I would have all the metadata in place. It would be super easy for me to bounce the project. The project would be uploaded automatically. Payments I could handle pretty easily. All that stuff was automated to a degree where I could really focus on turning knobs. And then at some point, the natural next step was, is there a system to how I turn knobs? And, a typical, let's say, data scientist or ML engineer would maybe say, oh, let's take all your knob settings and all the songs you've mastered and put it into a black box and let the machine figure out what to do for which song. The problem is that, first of all, you need to get all that data, and that's a huge copyright issue. And secondly, you don't really know what you're optimizing for. I mean, you are essentially optimizing for pattern matching, for matching a song to certain knob settings, but the system doesn't know why it does something. It just does it because it has seen it before, and it thinks that if it makes these adjustments, it will be most similar to what it has seen before. And so I thought this is not the way to go about it, because the way I think about music as an engineer is not, oh, I've turned these knobs before, I want to turn these knobs again. It's more about, why am I turning these knobs? And it's most likely because, I don't know, there's low end rumble and you need to get rid of that low end rumble, or there's a resonance in the mid range that I need to get rid of. So there's like certain criteria, obviously, we have as humans when we listen to music that makes something sound good. And so I put that into mathematical formulas, and then I just told the system, here is sort of the benchmark, or these are the criteria you need to optimize, and then this is what you can do, right? Like, here are all the knobs. You can turn this knob, you can push this slider, and then this is what you optimize for. And then I just let it run. And so for each song, it tries a zillion different combinations until it figures out, oh, this is a combination of knobs that actually works for the song. And so this is how our first version of Masterchannel came about. And obviously, over the years, we got smarter and smarter about nudging the system in the right direction and refining those criteria, because different people from different genres have made us aware of certain issues in their genre, and so on and so forth.
Which is also one of the reasons why we talk to users and people on a daily basis, because we love to hear what kind of sound they like. So in order to create kind of I would say a blueprint of what is a good master.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's what made the conversation with Wes so interesting. So we were talking to DJ Fresh at the time by chance.
Yeah, and just a funny story there. If you want to get in touch with people and you don't really know them, try LinkedIn. Because I saw that DJ Fresh was on LinkedIn. I sent him a message, and that ended up with being a lot of conversations. Nowadays, I text him on WhatsApp if needed. And so utilize LinkedIn. It's worth it.
Yeah, until everybody else catches on.
Yeah.
In the music industry, everybody else already did that 5 years ago. So DJ Fresh, he introduced us to Wes Clark, and it was a very open discussion we had with him. open-ended, just saying hi. Wes is obviously very interested in technology because, as a mix engineer, you work with tech every day. And we started chatting, and it became pretty obvious that he's super keen on what we're building. I explained the same thing I explained to you guys about how the technology was built. And I feel like that was the spark. It just felt like Wes was sort of a part of the team already. Like there was this, like this between the lines feeling with him. And so we decided, okay, maybe we want to build something together. And so when we started chatting, or Wes and I started chatting, I was just curious about his experience mixing and mastering music, because as I said, I have this vision for a song when it comes in, and these different criteria that I want to optimize for. And I was curious, does everybody, or does he think in the same way, or is it just me? And it turns out he works in a very similar fashion, but obviously he has, let's say different criteria or some other things that he maybe pays more attention to. So the cool thing about our system is we just created let's say we branched off from our core system and just added Wes's ears that would nudge the system in extra directions. So let's say if the normal model would hear that resonance in the mid range and would say, oh, this is the worst this can be, I need to completely eliminate it. The Wes version listens to that same part of the song and is like, yeah, maybe we need to tidy it up a bit, but actually I kind of like it, so let's keep a bit of that. And that's sort of how the Wes clone is different from our normal mastering service, because it just steers the system in a bit of a different direction based on the circumstances.
Yeah, and I would just also, because add that with Wes Clark, one of the important parts there was that he is interested in tech, but maybe one of the key reasons, or which is one of the key reasons to why he decided on working with us, was because he saw that, okay, this is going to be a thing in the future at some point either way. But he also was confident enough that his skill set, there was still a market there. And I feel like that way of thinking is a very mature way of working with tech companies like Masterchannel, that you're so confident in what you do yourself, that you're also open to other outlets and can explore that, because there are so many and sorry for wording, but there's so many narrow-minded people out there who are so afraid of like losing their job or losing their skill set, but if you are so afraid of that, then there's probably something there. Yeah, just want to challenge the whole industry on that. Like, if you know what you're doing, then you're probably pretty good or pretty set.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think, the whole narrative surrounding AI at the moment is, or the whole bet behind AI is that it's going to replace a huge portion of the workforce, you could argue, right? Like everybody's jumping onto Claude and everybody's using it. And I just keep asking myself, like, okay, what net positive outcome are we actually accomplishing here, right? Like if you're cynical about it, you could argue, as you just said, if we're really able to replace 50% of our workforce, then maybe that part of the workforce requires some sort of new education, right? It can, like, based on the technological insight that we have, how these things work, if it's that easy to replace parts of the workforce, then I think that says more about the workforce than it says about the technology.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, I'm totally on board, right? Like if you feel like what you bring to the table is going to be replaced, I think your immediate response should be, okay, then what do I bring to the table that can't be replaced? Or can I learn something? Can I evolve that makes me not replaceable, right? Obviously easier said than done in a lot of ways. But I think that still holds true. And I think a lot of the fears that we had in the beginning, that some creative professions would be profoundly affected by AI, have actually turned out to not be true, because it turns out that people don't want to watch AI slop all day. They don't want to listen to AI music all day, at least not yet.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I think that's a healthy perspective. Let's see if we have any questions at the moment.
We have an interesting one where an issue.
Yeah. Good comment from Tom. AI won't replace you, but someone working with AI surely might. That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, it depends. I would even challenge that maybe, because I feel like sometimes especially over the last few months, I think people have become nostalgic, or like they're longing for um the human element again, right? Like, I mean, this is the cliche example, but how many of us have received AI generated emails, or feel like whenever they're reading something online, it's all polished and perfect, and suddenly like a beacon of quality if you can say this is all human, you know.
And I think going into, because there were two questions here. One is where we are going with Masterchannel, and the other one was a more product related one on both like more agency, but also the educational part, which kind of checks in on all all these three checks of the boxes of what we actually are developing now. Because we are developing a whole new experience with Masterchannel, just short on where people can actually tweak things in real time if they like to. They can kind of guide the mix more, and we are providing more educational aspects throughout that journey. Because one of the key things when it comes to mastering and mixing, and especially engineering, from our perspective, and now that we have mastered close to 1.7 million songs in total, is that it isn't necessarily mastering that is the main issue for a lot of songs. It's more about the steps before, and the better you can get at that, the better the mastering outcome will be. And also a bit on how to actually what to do if you are a beginner or if you are an intermediate, because there are so many. There isn't like one linear path when it comes to creating music, which most of you probably understand.
Yeah, and I think for us, it's also been a process to realize that. So the you could say at the outset, the promise for Masterchannel was that we want to simplify the whole mastering experience, because from experience we know, or you especially knew how much of a hassle it can be to figure out, you know, how do I best prepare my mix. Then I need to find an engineer, I need to pay the engineer, I need to communicate with the engineer. Quite often there's disappointment in the process because you pay a lot of money and what you get back doesn't meet your expectations. And so we were pretty set for a long time on the idea that we want to take all of that mental burden away from you. And to a certain extent, I still think that holds true, because frankly, there are just aspects in mastering, and this is not from a condescending perspective, but just like from a reality check perspective. If you don't have the acoustic environment, if you don't have the tools, let's say the speakers, um, the precision tools to really make adjustments, you're just not going to get to a point where you can make good mastering decisions, right? Like, obviously you can train your ears, and you could probably go a long way on headphones, but at some point you will hit the limitations of your environment. And so that part, I think, is always something that we will have to take care of for the user.
Yeah.
So this is where I really think AI can shine, because this is net positive, right? Like, there's no way in this world where you could have enough, let's say, mastering infrastructure so that every single person for every single song can attend a mastering studio. That's just physically impossible.
Yeah.
Obviously, for your top 5 tracks that you know are going to be hits, you know, go to a mastering studio, have the full experience. But for all of the rest, I think we can really create a benefit by making that happen in the background. But then where the system maybe, as I illustrated with Wes, maybe needs a nudge in a certain direction, or asks you, do you want me to choose option A or choose option B? That's where we can implement user input, right? Like, similar to how you would work with an engineer. The engineer wouldn't ask you, oh, are you hearing this resonance at 2.2K? and then you'd probably be sitting in the studio like, no, I don't. This is not what I care about. I came here to really, I don't know, make this a club banger type of a track. So that's where we're taking Masterchannel now. We've realized people want to take agency, they want to influence the process, but we want to keep the technical decisions that are super hard to make if you don't have the equipment locked away, so that there's no chance for you to actually mess it up.
Yeah, and just to answer a question from Michael Morello here, you don't need to credit Masterchannel. And that is also when talking about human mastering engineers versus Masterchannel, like AI mastering technology isn't something that you need to credit. We love to hear songs that have been done through us, because we master, well, now it's close to 100,000 songs a month. It's hard for us to actually understand what kind of songs that are being released out there. But yeah, there's no need for you to tag us or put us as the mastering engineer. But we love to hear from you if you actually release songs that have been done by us.
Yeah, totally agree. Let's check out any other questions. Tricky to go up to. Yeah.
And maybe talk a bit about, because one of these things is something that we actually have discussed quite a lot with the users lately when it comes to the loudness levels on different genres, especially for electronic music and DJs. I'm a DJ myself, so I totally understand the challenge here. But Simon, you've been talking quite a lot lately on loudness. So maybe give a brief explanation of what it means.
Yeah, and then you can do the business model question, maybe how best Masterchannel makes money.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, to cut to the chase with your question about loudness, so that's coming in the next update, that you can actually influence the loudness. -6, -4. And yeah, so if I understand you correctly, you're probably trying to hit those targets, but it's too difficult because you run into distortion. Typical problem. Usually, and this is maybe counterintuitive, loudness is usually all about tonal balance, so EQing essentially. So if you run into a lot of distortion, that's typically because you have too much energy in your track, sometimes tucked away in some masked frequencies, and you're trying to maybe hit the limiter or hit the compressor too hard, and it all just starts falling apart because that energy needs to go somewhere. And if you just put it through a limiter, it's just being squashed without actually making the whole song feel louder. So what I would encourage you to do is look at your EQ. And one easy way to check that at the top of my head is if you realize that your heavily limited track sounds quite different tonality wise compared to your original mix, then that's usually an indicator that your frequency balance was pretty off. Because, and maybe I'm sharing secrets here, but what happens in the Masterchannel system is that 90% of all the adjustments we make are actually filter coefficients, so more or less EQ. And in the end, when we decide how loud is the track going to be, the most gain reduction we typically do is, let's say, 2 dB peak, right? So the limiting is very, very subtle that we apply because we don't need to. And if you have great tonal balance, pushing the limiter harder won't give you any more loudness. And that's probably what you're noticing as well, right? You're trying to crank up that or crank down that threshold, and you're just getting more and more distortion. That's because the limiter can't fix your tonal balance. So I would look into EQing. And as I said, with the next update, you'll be able to influence loudness directly. So you should be able to conveniently hit those targets without distortion.
Yeah, and quickly on the business model, because we started to go a bit into the platform. So Masterchannel, the main business model for us is a typical subscription model on our own platform, where you can get unlimited amount of songs for a monthly or an annual fee. So it's pretty straightforward, and that has also been one of the key things for us when designing the business model for our company. Like, most other platforms that you're going to use or test out have some kind of limits, which makes it hard for you to actually understand what do I get or when do I cross that threshold of needing to pay more. So far, and now we're at year 5, we're running this company, we always managed to keep it unlimited, because then we know that the challenge of actually making sure that you can get unlimited amount of songs is on us. We are the one that has to deal with cost cutting when it comes to processing and all of those things. And then we have another outlet, which is we white label our technology, which means that other platforms can integrate our technology with the same kind of design, but in their own way. So the typical platform that are using us are distribution companies. We are integrated into TuneCore, Ditto, Amuse, Symphonic, and 30 plus other platforms across the globe where people can pay per song. So that's like a way of keeping people on their platform and providing them with the mastering service. And if you want more like album mastering or bulk mastering or more agency, then you come to our own platform and do the subscription. So that's like simplified the way that we built up everything. And yeah, and as mentioned, we've done this for 5 years now. There's a question here on how many employees we are. Some people might be surprised, but we used to be 2.5. From 1st of June, we're 3 people mastering close to 100,000 songs. So I'd like to see the mastering facility that can do the same.
And maybe it would be interesting to also give some context on why we landed on 3 employees, because that number wasn't always 3.
Yeah, we used in the beginning, we did the typical startup route. We raised money, we hired people, and we hired them to solve problems that me and Simon originally should have solved ourselves. For example, what's our value proposition? Who are our main customers? And that led to a hefty growth in the number of, or in the headcount, but we didn't really make that much money out of it. So in 2022, we were 15 days away from going bankrupt. We managed to raise a small amount of money, like $300,000 again. And then we really focused on being small, lean, but really focus on the users. What are their main problems? What kind of problems can we help, and how can we best design a system that helps them in a way that actually solves a problem and isn't just a gimmick, which you probably experience with a lot of other AI services out there, that it's kind of shell, but you don't really know what you're getting in the end.
And I'm not going to drop names, but what I find interesting in that context is we were at Music Biz in Atlanta 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And there was an interesting panel about, it was one of the panels about AI in the music industry and how you can streamline your business and make everything more productive. And it's probably ironic that we say this as an AI company, but everybody is talking about how to streamline processes with AI, how everybody should use more AI. And there was one person in particular that said, everyone at work should be encouraged to spend their salary in AI tokens, so that they can, I don't know, generate prototypes, prompt themselves out of work. I don't know. I think, going back to the bankruptcy bit in our story, I think what we learned through that was something that's a universal truth, maybe that is gonna hold for longer than just use more AI, which is that you need to prioritize and you need to focus. And there's one other famous tech leader who has said this in the past. But focusing, I think, is really the utmost test to whether you're on track or not. Because if you don't know what to focus on, then there's probably not something that's really generating value for your company, or you haven't found that one thing yet, and you're just keeping yourself busy without actually making progress. And I think that was us before that experience. we thought we were going in all directions at once, and we were making progress by just doing stuff. But looking back, I don't think we woke up every day and we knew this is the one thing we should all focus on. And if I think, I mean, it's obviously split between tech and distribution, but when I wake up in most mornings,
and distribution meaning marketing, not music distribution.
Yes,
just
true.
for the audience there.
Good call. I always have one thing or two things where I'm like, this is what I really need to get done today. Everything else is kind of a side gig. And I think what makes AI so tempting for many companies is that they think they no longer need direction or they no longer need focus because they can do it all. But I think if you do it all, no matter if you use AI or humans or whatever, you just dilute everything that you stand for and everything that you're building. Like, how much thought capacity can you give to one thing if you're doing 100 things?
Yeah, and that's also why we are really doubling down on mastering music and not going into the direction of distribution or creating whatever else product that we could have made at this point, because we believe that we're too early. And to touch on the point on distribution there, first and foremost, DistroKid, that's not ours. That's an internal product they acquired from a guy in Canada a couple of years ago. And when it comes to Amuse, you can't use the Wes Clark AI on their platform.
You have to be our customer for that.
Yeah, you have to be. That's true. But yeah, that's been very important with the focus, and that's also made it much more fun, I would say, to work here, because it's kind of cliche, but when it comes to work, you always say, okay, do you have a purpose of waking up in the morning? And we know clear what we are going to do every day. And that also makes it more interesting to actually come to work. And when we are finished for the day, we know that, okay, yeah, we put down the effort to take us a step further. But one of the key things for us to actually make that possible with 3 people that we are right now is that we managed to... Is there any questions? No. Is that we actually have built up a culture where we need to kind of we overshare, or we talk a lot with each other on the focus, because they're so easy to go into different directions if we aren't talking every day, because everybody's a creative here and has their own set of thoughts on where we are going or where we want to go. And to be really concise and also hold each other accountable on the clear focus that we talk about every day. And I feel like that's a big part of the culture here, that like the transparency in the way that we communicate with each other when it comes to focus.
Yeah, and running the danger of turning this into a cult. I think focus, you could even say like it's like the essence of your company in a lot of ways, because it's a blend of, let's say, technology, business model, marketing. They all those parts, they come with their own set of priorities that are fused into what the company's focus should be. And then in addition, you have motivational challenges, right? Because from, let's say, a business perspective, Christian could be telling us to call up users every day because that's what generates subscribers, but that obviously would completely destroy the company culture because nobody likes doing that, right? So you need to find a balance when you try to focus on something between this is actually useful, this makes sense, let's say objectively, and then also how much do you give in to each person's strength, preferences, living situation even, right? Like if somebody needs to work remotely or something. So I think, yeah, if you manage to prioritize, I think and that goes for being an artist as well. Like, I mean, that's just universally true. I think not if you do whatever sort of business it is, I think knowing what to focus on is key.
Yeah, and just to touch on the question from Niklas there, because I feel like that's a good one. Before we can, I see there's a lot about Lander as well, and we can chip in on that. But when it comes to the challenges that we like to work on, both me and Simon, and also Alfred, our third person, we have our own kind of things that we really like to do. Personally, I really like to understand people, our users, like really diving in, and that for me is like having coffee chats with a lot of people that I get to know, and then the company gets some value out of it as well, and the users also feel heard, and their opinion really matters. But I would say that challenges in a company that you like to do is just a part, because there's so many things in a company that you don't really like to do, but you have to do them. But you have to like embrace it and rather enjoy the process versus the actual goal, and try to learn from it as best as you can, I would say. I don't know if you have anything to add there.
I think it's similar to what your body needs nutrition wise, right? Like if you only listen to I want chocolate, I want chocolate, I want chocolate, we all know where that leaves you at the end of the day. And similarly, if you never give in to I want chocolate, you're probably going to be miserable at some point, right? And so I think for me personally, I know that there are certain technical challenges that I love, listening to music or doing mastering and then understanding what happens, trying to teach our systems to do the same. That's one personal challenge I love. But then also what gives me a different type of motivation is, for example, seeing a business challenge, for example, that some people don't understand parts of our offering, and then coming up with a UX flow that explains that makes it obvious that this is what happened, this is what's happening, this is the value that you're getting, those type of things. So I think that motivation or those challenges can come from different directions, and depending on the day, depending on what I've done before, you need to find. I think if you are a bit versatile in your head, I think you can find a spark in any of those things. You can gamify it for yourself because you know this is something that I'm after right now.
Yeah. So it's about like finding what really what makes it tick in the end, and and to understand that, okay, this will probably be something. At least I like to look at tasks that I don't like to do. Of what can I learn that can be valuable in the long term. So it will be easier for me next time, because especially when it comes to building a company, I've kind of understood that this is probably not the last time I'm going to start a company, because I like the process. But there are a lot of tasks within starting a company that isn't that fun. But the more you do it, the better it will be, and the easier it will get, essentially. So you're kind of building up your own knowledge bank or knowledge hub.
Yeah, and that's, if you outsource all of that to AI, you're not going to learn much, right? No. So that's another way where you want to be cautious.
Yeah.
Let's say.
But let's touch a bit on the competitive landscape here, because there are a lot of people talking both about Lander and also DistroKid mastering. And I feel like just to give some context on the competitive landscape, there were actually, I would say, more prominent mastering services out there a couple of years ago than it is today. Both due to acquisitions, but also because some of them had just given up. So as of now, there are us, eMastered from US, Lander from Canada, and then you have DistroKid has their own. That's mainly it as of now. But I remember when we started this company, we were asked a lot about, okay, what's the difference between you and Lander? And you had a really good explanation when it comes to the tech, which I think is very valuable also today, especially when in the discussion of how we actually built up the data, or not using data set, and the ethical challenge that comes from the way that things were done before.
Yeah, so as I said earlier, when I talked about my mastering process, right, just very concretely speaking, one way to teach a system potentially how to master is I record or I write down all the settings I do for a particular song, and then I try to teach the system this song needs these settings. And then you sort of have to rely on the system building an internal understanding of this sort of song goes with these sort of settings, but there's no way for you to actually make sure that it's looking for the right criteria. The example I often give in webinars for early image detection AI, for example, if you want to teach a system how to distinguish cats from dogs, What happened in early models until they figured out to actually look inside the model was that the model was not actually looking at the animal, it was looking at the background. And because I think it was dogs, dog photographs tend to have more grass in them because pictures are usually taken outside. The model was actually looking for grass in the picture. And whenever there was grass in the picture, it would give a higher probability of it being a dog. And that's obviously something you don't want to happen with music, right? Let's say you have a lot of hip hop songs that have similar settings, and then somebody uploads a rock song, and for some reason the system thinks, oh, this is maybe hip hop, and it applies something that doesn't even match the vibe of the rock song. And there's no way for you to know, right? Because the system just thinks, oh, yeah, I think it's similar. I should apply the same settings. And so that's why it was so important for us to build a system where we can actually understand what's happening and nudge the system or improve those criteria over time with feedback from you guys, with feedback from other engineers like Wes Clark. And Lander, they did the other thing, right? Like they had engineers literally working day and night trying to provide the system with settings, at least to our knowledge. That's how the Lander guys explained it to us. And the problem I see still with Lander, they claim that they have like tens of thousands of tracks in their database for training, is that that is still a super, super small number for a model to really derive meaning from it, to really understand if this problem is present in a track, I should do this and that. It's more like, I think this song sounds similar to that song, so I'm going to apply these settings. And that's typically why I would say we are so consistent in our output, because no matter what you throw at the system, it always looks at the criteria and tries to make sure that the criteria are optimized against, and not just, have I seen this before? Does this look familiar? That type of stuff. And that obviously, I think now we're at a point where we can really use that to our advantage, because we can really build on top of that system. We can, as we said earlier, we can give you guys more control to actually push the model in the right direction, which, in Lander's case, the only thing they can do is sort of add settings on top of what the model has suggested. And that the problem with that is that there's no way for them to control that what you're doing is still within the bounds of a, let's say, technically correct master.
Yeah. And that's also one of the reasons why we can claim that we're probably the only mastering service that is truly 100% ethical. Because despite, like, Lander has their own program now where they pay people for using their songs, but you don't really know what happened 10 years ago when they were running that company. But yeah, that's, I'm not going to speculate live here on that.
I mean, in good faith, you could say they probably had their engineers, and those engineers produced most of that material. But as I said, I think just inherently, the approach just comes with its flaws, in my eyes.
Yeah. So yeah, we talked a bit earlier on the Wes Clark clone. So you can send us a message on our platform regarding that. That will be the easiest. But yeah, but I think, like, going back into the competitive landscape here. Where are you? Oh, are they?
Yeah, maybe this is an interesting question.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a good question for Michael, because most people probably don't think of music technology when they think of Oslo, Norway. And the reason is because there aren't really that many companies. But a fun fact is that Tidal, or as it was called previously, WIMP, was actually created in Oslo, Norway, back in the days before JC acquired it. I think it was 2015 or 2016 or something like that. But yeah, how would you say, as a German moving to Norway because of Masterchannel, how has it been to, like, build a company from Oslo and living here in the first place?
I would argue that the company building maybe wasn't the defining experience. I would maybe say more the day-to-day life is the defining experience in Scandinavia. I think it's, so I'm German, and I think the German upbringing is still rooted in, let's say, economic competition. You're measured against everybody else. it's a very individualistic society, those type of things. Scandinavia is more about looking inwards, work-life balance, high trust. And I think inevitably that translates to business practices, right? I think you could argue that in big economies like Germany, it's all about hustle culture and just staying busy, and like the conflict between life and work, right? If you have too much of a life, then you can't be a productive worker. And I think what Scandinavia has really taught me is that it's like we're filling the same box, right? Maybe it's two different ingredients, but work needs to have some sort of fulfillment to be sustainable long term, or purpose. Your life needs to, give you some other purpose and fulfillment. And instead of competing, I think they kind of nurture each other. So the more excited I am to come home, the more excited I am to be at work, because I'm not dreading the other thing when I'm in the other place, if that makes sense. So I think that has been my main experience in Scandinavia, that you want to build something that checks all the boxes. And surprisingly, I think it works much better.
Yeah, and I agree. I'm from Oslo, Norway, originally, but one of the key benefits, I would say, when it comes to living here and work, especially when we travel abroad to conferences or to events, is that we're much more on these conferences, because when we come back here, it is to create a product and create a company. And we can really focus on that, going back to the focus. We talk a lot about focus, but yeah, we can focus here. And then when we are out there, we can focus on what matters on the event or conferences. So it doesn't really mix in each other, which I would say you're more likely to do if you live in London or New York, where it's always hustling and bustling all the time. And here you can kind of relax more and be more focused in many ways.
And also maybe, and you might have noticed that we're cynical about a lot of things that are being hyped at the moment. I think if you're healthy and if you're grounded in your everyday life, then you also get a more distant perspective on a lot of things, and you can decide. You don't feel like you have to jump onto something just because it's happening. You can sort of be a bit skeptical, try it out, go back and forth, and then be like, okay, this aspect of it I'm gonna adopt, and this part maybe is not for us. And I think that's super healthy, and something that I think a lot of other companies struggle with, because they always feel like they need to join every single hype cycle that is happening, and then they realize, oh, this isn't working, but we spend all of our energy and our focus into it, and now we need to do it again with the next hype cycle. And then at the end of the day, you ask yourself, okay, what is it that we actually have contributed to all of this, instead of just following what is hot at the moment?
And building on that, because when you build a company in the first place, the greatest asset that you have is time. And time in market beats everything. So as long as you stay true to what you actually contribute with and build on that to create more and more value, then the chances of you actually making it is much higher, rather than trying to always chase that news article or be the coolest guy at that conference or at that event, because in the end, nobody cares.
I want to be the coolest guy, though. Oh, kidding. Oh, interesting. Robert. Hi, Robert. Are we coming to Indie Week or Mondo? Probably not Indie Week, maybe Mondo.
Yeah. I have a wedding to plan in 2 weeks, so I'm probably a bit too busy to go to Mondo now.
Yeah, fair point.
Yeah.
And
no, Indie Week, I mean. Mondo is a possibility.
Mondo is possible, yeah. Let's see. What advice would you give your 22-year-old self? Oh, that's a tough one. Because I always feel like we tend to judge ourselves with the knowledge we have now, and we tend to forget how little, comparatively little knowledge you had back then. I think the biggest thing I've learned over the last 5 years is keep the big picture in mind, but focus on the everyday. Like, it sounds so cliche, but I think what you do in everyday life accumulates to something bigger. And that's sort of, I think, how I've started living my life more. not expecting anything at a certain point in time just because I think it's due, but just taking steps every day towards getting there.
Yeah.
And then I think you just need to have persistence, dedication, and the rest will fall into place, or it's not meant to happen.
Yeah. And yeah, I would probably, because I would say that as of now, I'm probably more humble than I was when I was 22 years old.
Definitely.
Because I thought, yeah, going back, or it's 10 years ago, but I think I probably thought I was much better or at what I did back then than I am right now. But also, like, being humble is a key thing in anything you do, because in the end we are only humans and we need to speak to humans and learn from humans. So
the scary part of this is, thank you for all the nice comments, but the scary part is in 10 years I'm going to watch this and think, what the heck did I think I knew back then?
Yeah.
This is all so cringy to look at. But for the moment, I feel flattered. Thank you.
Yeah.
Last technical question. Any chance you could make a VST plugin? We've been discussing it just very briefly. 2 challenges, 1 challenge. We don't want to lose the feel of the service that you offload the responsibility. Second challenge, processing capacity on your computer is limited for all the AI stuff that we do.
But I think if we are to go into the DAW at some point, it will be more in the educational or guidance approach, because that makes more sense. Because if you think of mixing versus mastering, mixing is a more, I would say, creative part of creating music in many ways than mastering. So I don't see mixing being fully automated in a good way anytime soon, at least.
Agree.
Well, gentlemen, I'm afraid I've got to jump in here and bring it to a close, but holy smokes, what a great story. And you guys are both wise way beyond your years. I'm not going to tell the audience how old you are, but it is astonishing how accomplished you both are at such a young age. I'll give the audience a hint. Combined, they are not as old as I am. Put it that way.
That's a good one.
But no, I'm so proud of what you've done, and it's such a pleasure to hear your stories. You're so grounded, humble. I hope my kids grow up to be like you guys. So
Thank you,
keep
Tom.
doing what you're doing, man.
Thank you so much, and thanks for all the great questions and all the nice words in the chat. Yeah, that means a lot to us, that people actually want to listen to 2 people sitting in the northern part of Norway or northern part of Europe.
Well, come back to New York soon. Robert Singerman is one of the organizers of the Mondo Music Conference. It sounds like he'd like to lure you guys in as speakers this year.
Feel free to send us an email, Robert.
And again, you've got a new friend in Nashville. And if you ever get over this way, please hook me up or look me up, and keep doing what you're doing. 2.5 employees, 100,000 songs processed a month. My mind is blown. So incredible. Great
Thank you,
job.
Tom.
Thank
you
you
for having us, and thank you to everyone in the chat.
Y'all take care.
You too.
Have a good one.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.